what's going on, and welcome to Starting on the Bench with Tim V. It's a podcast where normal people can talk about the sports they love. And on today's topic, we have Formula 1. Now, you probably have gotten used to me talking about basketball or football, we did talk about Australian, Aussie, or footy. So that was a really exciting time to learn about new sports. But today I want to really focus on narrow down on Formula 1. There are two types of people in this world: those who are drastic fans of Formula 1 and those who could not care less. I have not found a middle ground yet, but I'm really excited to, confront this topic and really talk about the things that why people are not really listening or watching Formula 1 as opposed to before, and why is it such a huge developing sport right now. Now, I've been a huge fan of Formula 1, especially when closer to beginning of 2000s. One of the reasons is because, obviously, my dad was a huge Formula 1 fan because of, Schumacher, right? This German driver who became a driver for Ferrari in Formula 1. And a lot of people, especially Europeans, they're huge fans of Ferrari, right? But at the same time, what drove me closer to following the sport is the competition, right? So before I started following in early 2000s, I probably was 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. But then I discovered on Netflix there's this special that was Formula 1 from seasons, like a documentary sort of, from 2017, 2018. In 2018, 2019, so 2 seasons, right? The reason why I say that is because I never knew that their season starts in the beginning of the year, right? So what they call is the winter test, right? So you prepare your whole car for a couple of months, tune it up and all that, and then you have winter testing to make sure that the car is great, the tires, suspensions, shift gear stuff. That's how much I know about cars. Shift gear stuff. But other than that, it's just a preparation for the whole season, for the whole year. So that's basically what they do, right? So watching this Netflix documentary, it was 10 episodes, 1 season. And that's something I started watching because I was like, you know what, it's worth a try. It is a sport. People consider it a sport. NASCAR apparently is a sport where you have 200 laps turning left. It's a nightmare. I think this is the only sport that you can follow under influence, where you're in the stands and you're like, I have no idea what's going on, but they're turning left, and now they're left, and now they're left, right? But Formula 1 is a little bit more complicated because you don't have a lot of races. You only have 21. Some people can consider 21 is a lot of races, and others are not enough, especially if you are a driver that keeps on having last places. There's last places in the race, and therefore you want to have more. It's kind of logical. You want to have more races in order to get to the top. But then those who keep on winning number 1 place and become world champions, then to them 21 is plenty. They know exactly how many races, where they're going to be doing it, and how much effort they need to put into each, right? So the good thing to watch from the perspective or point of view of a fan, right? Because as a driver, you're obviously going to be a little bit jealous because this is Formula 1. Now, to a common understanding, apparently there's Formula 2 and Formula 3. I did not know that. But it was exciting to figure out that if you're in Formula 3, then you can move up to Formula 2, and then you're being sponsored by different companies and all that, and then essentially you want to be the best driver in that league or in that division. So I guess it's like Division 1, Division 2, Division 3 in basketball. But then Formula 1 is like this huge thing where it's like people can barely hear about you in Formula 2, but then if you're Formula 1, everybody's like, oh my gosh, you have to be the best driver ever. So to kind of give you like a little bit, if you're not a Formula One fan, that's okay. I'm just happy to talk about it and talk about the competition of the sport, because this is something that drove me insane when I was watching, right? You keep on watching and you cannot stop, because it's one of those shows or documentaries that's like addictive, like Last Dance, right? You keep on watching because it's curious. The way they tell the story, the way they interview people, is so interesting. So here we go, just a little bit of information about the sport. So in Formula One, they have 10 teams and 20 drivers, right? So each company presents, or each team presents, two drivers that compete on each race, right? So 21 races. I read that they want to do a little bit of changes. Probably keep the races, but the changes they want to do is money. But we can talk about it in a couple of points later. So 10 teams, 20 races. We obviously have our good old classic Ferrari that's been a part of, part of races for so long. I watched this movie called Le Mans, which has Christian Bale and Matt Damon, which was a super interesting movie, just to see how, I forgot how Christian Bale sounds like, his actual accent and all that, but it was really interesting. But it was a movie about cars and Le Mans driving 24 hours, which is, again, it's kind of like a resemblance of Formula One, right? They got Ferrari, then they got Mercedes, Haas, which is American team, which is kind of interesting because majority of the drivers are from like Western Europe, and then in England, and then all of a sudden this is like American team that has American owner, but the drivers are from like Sweden and Germany, and then the director or the principal of the F1 of Haas is from Copenhagen, however you want to pronounce that. But it was so interesting to see how they compete, and then none of them are actually Americans. All of them are European, which is, I've never seen that kind of sport before. It's always been like international thing, but all of a sudden this is only for like, okay, Europeans somehow. Maybe they're more talented, I don't know. But it was interesting. Apparently Red Bull. Did you know that Red Bull has a Formula One? I didn't know that, but apparently they do. They actually have two teams on Formula One, right? Ferrari has only one team, two cars. Mercedes has one team, two cars, and Mercedes has been number one for the past 5 years, right? The main driver is Lewis Hamilton, and he got 5 world championships, right? So he's been like the best. Majority of the races during the year or during the season, he's the guy who gets like, he always gets on the podium, so either first, second, or third place, right? So it was really interesting. And then obviously we have Renault, which is a French car. They have Formula One, and if you drive Renault, it's kind of, you notice that, okay, maybe Renault isn't that great, right? But apparently Formula One, they've been consistent in like 4th, 5th, and 6th place. McLaren, which I've been such a huge fan of McLaren, as cars as well as a production company, and they also have a Formula One team. And again, the deputy or the chief of Formula One McLaren, his name is Zach Brown, and he's American, obviously. But the rest of the team, the drivers are from like France and Spain. Oh, so it was really interesting. And then we got an Indian company and all that. But there are other teams that I'm not gonna mention for the sake of time. But if you're interested, go ahead and Google it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see what kind of teams and how much money they. Oh my gosh, how much money they invest in that. It's crazy, right? So I never knew this, but if you're driving Formula One car, you're driving a $1 million car. That's as simple as it gets. You get up to like 200 miles per hour, which is 320 kilometers per hour, something like that. And it's a crazy, that car has to be so fast. So they're fine tuning everything. We're talking about suspensions, brakes, carbon fiber, the seating, even the material that like the drivers wear. Everything is handcrafted, prepared for these races, because again, like, these people it's a fight or flight, right? You either drive really well or you keep on crashing those $1 million cars all the time, which was very interesting, because if you have 21 races, and then sometimes if you bump into another car, it automatically something is loose because I mean it's carbon fiber, but carbon fiber is going to feel like a paper and the speed of 200 miles an hour. So you have to be very careful not to touch it. That's something I realized when I was watching is that a lot of drivers are, they get into these crashes, and especially when it starts raining. Oh my goodness, the amount of money you have to invest in these companies, Formula One teams, in order to maintain it and make sure that each week, because they race on Sunday, you have to invest in that, right? So, the amount of money, I was actually looking this up, is contracts for drivers and different people who are on the team, right? So, on average, a contract would be around 15-20 million euros or dollars. I'm not sure about that. I think they're doing dollars. So if you're in Ferrari, the main driver can gets 40 million. The second driver or secondary driver, he gets $10 million, right? So if you're McLaren, for McLaren right now we have Daniel Ricciardo, who just signed a contract for $20 million, and a driver number 2 gets like $2 million, which is like, you have to be good in order for people to pay you $20 million for like a year or 2 years. I think like 2 or 3 years or something like that. Then Red Bull has crazy contracts as well. Max Verstappen, who's a Dutch guy. I'm not a big fan of him, honestly, but for the sake of the conversation of this episode, I just want to say he's a great driver. He actually is. He's like one of the youngest people who keeps on breaking every single record, gets on the podium and all that. Red Bull sponsor them. The drink sponsors Formula One. Imagine like Gatorade decides to you know what? Let's do it in a Formula One. I was like, Gatorade, get out of here. This is not your game. This is not your time. But that's basically it. Red Bull is a Gatorade of Europe. That's quote me on that. Put it on a T-shirt, right? But that's really interesting. A lot of money goes into that. What is it about? Right now, they're trying to confront each team and say that you're not allowed to spend more than $150 million on a season, right? So that includes contracts, includes cars, and mechanics, different parts. Because here's the thing: the reason why they're doing is for instance, Ferrari has been a part of Formula One for as long as I remember, 70 years or something like that. They've been celebrating. I'm sorry, not 70 years, not 70. I take that back. I need a proof check, so I'm not going to mention that. But they've been for as long as I remember. Let's go with 50 years. That's something I'm very confident in saying. Minimum of 50 years, right? So they have a lot of money because Ferrari is an expensive car. It's expensive vehicles, and even buying a Ferrari T-shirt or something like that, it's going to end up being a couple $100s, right? So they have a lot of money, right? But cars or teams like Haas, which is like this is their 6th season being a part of, or 6th year being a part of Formula One, so they don't have a lot of money, right? So now what they're doing is they're trying to minimize the spending for Ferrari, so Ferrari doesn't spend that much money on different equipment and different stuff to make their cars better. In that allow us to keep up with big brands, right? Even you know what? I'm gonna say McLaren is a huge brand, and Red Bull. So Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren are like one of the biggest names that I would say, right? I would want to put Renault, but Renault hasn't been that great lately. But if you're in Formula One, trust me, you're like you made it. Even for one season, you made it. Congratulations, right? But a lot of money is invested. And if you crash a car, that's like an easy $500,000 fix, right? And by I mean easy, it's like if you crash and the tire goes out or something like that, that's it. They have to go in and fix it and stuff like that, and that includes, paying money for the right people to fix it and for the parts especially. And those parts are really expensive. So that's something that I'm like, oh my gosh, a lot of money. So concerning or in regard to races, they have 21 races in total for a season over 5 continents. So they, Australia, Germany, Belgium, Uzbekistan, you have Austin, Texas in the United States. Then you have in England. A lot of tracks are in England, France, and all of that. So like there's a lot of countries that have specifically races and places that you can, they have to, they facilitate for those 20 cars, and five continents for you to, that's a lot. That's a lot of countries, a lot of continents, and 21 races. That's crazy. Um, yeah, that's that. If you think that five continents is a lot, try imagining fans of each team. That's, if obviously if you go in Italy and Ferrari's there, then every single person would be like Forza, Forza Ferrari, right? That's my best Italian, right? So you'll get a lot of Ferrari fans, and it would be interesting to see a statistic of how, in comparison to other sports right now, of how much for Formula One. Because as a person who would be like, you know what, if I'm gonna dedicate my time to being a Formula One fan, I'm not gonna get out of my way to go and see it and see it live. I'd rather go and watch it, on my TV. So that's something that I'll be like, you know what, whatever happens, I just want to watch it on TV. And usually that's like, depending on the time, obviously, if it's in Australia, it's going to be a little bit different time, and if it's in Europe, I live in Europe, so it's a lot easier to watch. So a lot of fans are going to be either being excited for their team or booing, and it all comes down to drivers and seeing them how they're prepared. And what I've noticed is that loyalty is everything to those drivers, right? So if they're driving an expensive car, if the driver trusts that car, the car has to be perfect for the driver, right? For the driver to perform to the best of his abilities, he needs to trust the car. And this is something that I watched 2 seasons of Formula One, and season one was really interesting because I've never like gone behind the scenes of watching Formula One, right? I would all stop by and watch for a couple of minutes of on Sundays and stuff like that, with my dad. But I'm more of a fan of rally, because in Ukraine it's a huge sport of rally. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Not being a part, but kind of following and maybe going to some of the races to see how they are. But Formula One is a huge, and I mean a huge thing all over the world. If you're not, if you're not following that closely, that's fine. There's going to be somebody else who knows every single detail about each car, how they drive. And I'm not talking about, old, forever old people or people in their 30s and 40s or something like that. But I'm talking about like kids loving it, because it all starts from go-karting. Can you imagine that? Like, imagine a kid being 6 years old driving a go-kart with dreams of being a Formula One driver. And most of it, if not all of the drivers, are huge, and I mean huge Formula One fans when they were kids. And all of a sudden they are in Formula One. So it's like all your dreams come true. So I'm really excited to see if Formula One is gonna come out with season 3. Unfortunately, with a Rona situation, you can, with this pandemic, hope everybody's staying safe. It hasn't been really exciting to follow or watch any kind of sports because all of them were canceled. So I'm really excited to see if there's going to be Formula One races happening at the end of this year, because a lot of things are still canceled. Baseball's coming back, football's coming back, and hockey's actually, they're wanting to bring hockey back, which is going to be interesting. I love hockey. Tampa Bay Lightning! But Formula One is going to be such an interesting sport to keep on watching for the next couple of years, because I think that this is a sport that doesn't get a lot of time off, because they start with winter testing, then they go straight to races. Obviously, engineers, they have to do their best. I mean, incredible job. Good job, by the way, guys. Engineers is such a understating role in Formula One, right? And then a lot of drivers right now, they're re-signing or signing new contracts, so it's going to be a little bit different from, if you've gotten used to seeing Mercedes being number one for the past 5-6 years. I think it's 6 years now, including the 2019 Lewis Hamilton and won it once again, right? But that's it's gonna be interesting to see if maybe it's gonna be a shift of the sport again, because as far as I remember, Michael Schumacher he's a German driver for Ferrari. He was for I'm not going to mention which other team, but Ferrari as long as I remember, and he got so many trophies, so many number one places. Ferrari was amazing, but now Mercedes, their technologies, a lot of people working for them, and all that. How they're going to do, especially smaller cars, right? Smaller manufacturers like Haas, which is a NASCAR company, and then all of a sudden they want to be a part of F1. And I mentioned earlier, then it's their sixth season or year. But, they have a small team, a small group of people who are working for Formula 1, but they are doing the best they can. So I'm excited to see. It's definitely a sport it's a competition sport. It's a sport that somebody can easily pick up and follow. And it's going to be an interesting one to see in the next couple of years because, again, competition is everything. I'm not talking about just the drivers. Obviously, drivers have to do their best to not crash those $1 million cars, but, what kind of engineers they're putting in place, what kind of directors, deputies, chiefs and people in charge of who's exactly going to be responsible for the success of that team. So it's not just one person. It's a bunch of people. So loyalty is everything, but talent is bigger than loyalty. I've never seen that before. If I'm loyal to some kind of team, but I don't trust the car, my loyalty is going to be diminished. I mean, diminished by minutes. And so I hope that every single mechanic, and I'm so hopeful for this to come back. How desperate are you to follow different sports live, But yeah, Formula 1 on Netflix, season 1 and 2 is out. You can go ahead and watch it if you're interested. If not, follow this podcast, and we'll be talking more about it if you're interested as we develop other sports that were interesting as well. So thank you so much for tuning in and staying with us. Make sure you're, washing your hands. Don't scratch your eyes or your face. Keep washing your hands, and stay alert. All right, that's been it. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you in the next one. All right, peace.